Okay, back to the news. Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, has just left the UAE, a high-level meeting, including meeting with the President, His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan in Abu Dhabi. And joining us in the studio to talk about this now is Belabbes Benkredda. He's the director of the Dubai office at Bridge Media, a West East Public Relations Affairs organisation. Belabbes, many thanks indeed for joining us. Now, you spend a lot of your time flitting between Germany and the United Arab Emirates, working on ties between the two, and you wrote a cracking piece in the national newspaper this week talking about those ties between the Gulf and Germany as Angela Merkel tours the UAE. Oh, she left the Emirates today and is now in Saudi Arabia. And one of the things that struck me from your article, you were saying for the visit to become a success, a new and more aggressive approach towards relationship building in the GCC is necessary from Angela Merkel. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, the way business is done here in the region is obviously quite different from the way business is done, let's say, in Europe. And but I think, you know, given what happened yesterday and today, I think there's a growing realization in Merkel's government that certain, if you will, regional peculiarities have to be taken into context when you come here and you want to make big business. And so others have done it before, and I mentioned this in the article, like Nicolas Sarkozy and the Koreans are quite successful, and there's a lot of symbolism here in the region, and that's really something I believe that she could work on more.
And you make this point that some of these other leaders, they're real standard bearers for business in their country. Nicolas Sarkozy, forever promoting French brands. He's very aggressive. Angela Merkel takes a back seat when it comes to business. She regards herself as a politician and, to an extent, leaving business to the business people. And we know that clearly Germany has a significant trade ties with the UAE. I've got my German car parked outside here. Siemens, the engineering company, very prevalent here. So there are ties, but what more could be done? Germany wants more than just a market for selling a few Audis and BMWs, doesn't it?
Of course. But you know, if you look at what Sarkozy did last time, I'm not saying that the way Sarkozy does things is the right way, but just to give an example, last May when Sarkozy was here, they concluded an agreement, a bilateral agreement between France and the UAE, by which UAE citizens abroad who don't have access to a UAE embassy can go to a French embassy for consular affairs and all sorts of things, you know, instead of their the UAE embassy if it's not there. But you know, practically that has almost no value because there's probably very few Emiratis are ever going to make use of this. But symbolically, I think it made a very big impact because it's such an expression of brotherhood almost, you know, and that kind of symbolism I think is a very smart way to go about business here in the region.
There were a few deals signed, weren't there, yesterday during Angela Merkel's visit to Abu Dhabi. Talk us through some of those. Were any of them significant?
I think a couple of them were quite significant, but we're mostly talking about memorandums of understanding. There's hardly any very concrete deal, but there have been memorandums of understanding between Abu Dhabi Water and Electricity Authority and Siemens. Siemens is, you know, represented here by its CEO, and as a matter of fact, there's a couple of very high-profile German businessmen who are here, not only from Siemens but also from Wintershall. They've also signed an agreement with Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, and then Sheikh Nahyan, Sheikh Nahyan bin Mubarak, that is the Minister of Education, has also signed an agreement again with Siemens for architectural designs of his Innovation City campus. And
so we've had a few bits and pieces.
Yeah, but there's a couple of quite interesting. Linde Group, for example, is the world's largest industrial gas producer, and they've had a $1 billion contract signed last night as well. And basically, last night Angela Merkel,
worth making a trip for $1 billion.
It is, isn't it? And basically, last night Angela Merkel met Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince in Abu Dhabi, and they were standing behind a table. And then on the left and right, you would have this. One contract after the other was being signed by all those German companies who'd been queuing, basically represented by the highest level, you know, from like chairman of the board type of. So it was very successful as far as that is concerned.
Let's turn the tables and look at not German investment in the UAE and the Gulf, but Gulf investment in Germany. We know, for example, that investors in Abu Dhabi have a major stake in Daimler right now. Qatar's sovereign wealth fund is a major investor in Volkswagen. These are not isolated incidents, are they? These are major stakes in some of the crown jewels of German industry. What's the sentiment in Germany about this investment from the Gulf?
Well, there's no resentment like there often is when it, when Telekom, for example, Germany's national telecommunications provider, sold stakes to BlackRock, the venture capital firm. That was quite different. But with Arab investors, the sentiment among, the public sentiment is not very negative because they don't tend to demand controlling, they don't tend to demand control in the companies in which they acquire shares. So there's, generally, in terms of how it's perceived in the population, I don't think there's a problem. And, increasingly Germany is becoming interesting for the region as an investment destination. If you look at renewables, for example, where clearly Germany is one of the pioneering countries. Masdar, for example, had a big investment in Thuringia in photovoltaic plants, and there's a couple of other major contracts in the offing, as I'm being told. So clearly Germany is one of the preferred investment destinations.
German tourists, very important here, particularly in Dubai, but with the euro falling like a stone, we may not be seeing quite so many of them over the next few months or so. Is that something we should worry about significantly? Weak euro, German tourists going elsewhere on holiday?
I think the figures I've seen, they don't really indicate that there has been a major drop in numbers of German tourists. And in fact, you have to see it from both sides as well. There's Germany as a tourism destination for the GCC. The GCC is a very, very important place to, it generates a lot of money through GCC. But if you go to a city like Munich, for example, in summer, it's crowded. It's full of Arabs.
I always think of Geneva and London as being the two. But
it's actually London number one, followed by Munich.
I stand corrected on that one.
So but there has been a drop again in those figures, but I believe it was because we actually consult the German National Tourist Office as well, so I happen to know that there's been a drop across the board with all regions in the world, but the drop has been the smallest for the GCC region. So I think that's also probably indicative of the fact that the crisis hasn't been as pronounced here as it was in other regions.
And one of the points you make quite flippantly in your article is that this might be Angela Merkel's most pleasant few days in months, because she's fighting a number of fires at home, isn't she? The economic crisis is, economically it's very challenging. Weak euro, weak economy in Europe stands to reason, but also politically, the bailout of Greece is very unpopular among many people in Germany. She's got a fairly flaky majority with her coalition government. Not an easy time to be Angela Merkel, is it? What was the mood in the camp? Did you talk to her? Did you?
I was actually there earlier today, and the mood was quite good. This morning in Emirates Palace in Abu Dhabi. But that's also what I meant in the article. It definitely wasn't good over the past few weeks, because she's been struggling, and as you said, the situation since she lost the North Rhine-Westphalia elections. You have to understand, North Rhine-Westphalia has some 18 million inhabitants. It's super important. It's a bit like Ohio for the Americans. If you lose North Rhine-Westphalia, you really have a problem. And that federal state is its economy is twice as big as Greece's, for example. So you really have to understand the significance of those elections she's lost, and now she doesn't have the majority in the upper house anymore, and major bills like her tax reform, which she promised, will not be able to go through, and so it's very difficult for her at the moment back home.
A nice time to take a break in the Gulf. Well, we hope she's enjoyed it. Great news that Germany and the UAE signing a few contracts, but for now we're going to have to leave it there. Belabbes Benkredda, you are the director of the Dubai office at Bridge Media, and it's been a great pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.